A statement from Senator Brogdon, who could not be here today. Many of you will know that Senator Brogdon is a strong proponent and defender of the Constitution. And here's his statement. Congressman Paul understands all the threats facing our nation, be it an overreaching federal government which tramples the 10th Amendment, a foreign policy controlled by the United Nations, or an out-of-control Federal Reserve which is destroying our economy. Ron Paul's leadership, along with your hard work, has made auditing the Federal Reserve a major issue in this election. And a Paul presidency will be the only president that will hold the Federal Reserve truly accountable. President Reagan said it best when he said that now is the time to choose. We here today are presented with the opportunity to choose. We are presented with the choice of supporting the Constitution and individual liberty, or a president who has unlimited power, a dictator who has the ability to control our lives, even down to the individual purchase of health care. And let me assure you this, Ron Paul will repeal Obamacare. Ron Paul is the only person who recognizes the threat that our national budget poses to our personal security. Even Governor Sarah Palin said Ron Paul is the only person who has a serious plan to address the threat of reckless, out-of-control spending. Ladies and gentlemen, America is at a crossroads. We can continue with the failed policies of today, or we turn our eyes to the guiding light of the Constitution that the Founding Fathers entrusted to us. The consequences are too great. We cannot afford to get this wrong. We need a patriot. We need a leader. We need Ron Paul. I really appreciate you all being here today, showing the force of numbers that you support the Constitution, that you support the rule of law. It's always been a minority that changes things throughout history. And when it gets discouraging, that's what I always think about. I always think about all throughout history when it's only been a small number of people that have created these brush fires in people's minds and caused change. And we need that change. We all know how bad it is. We know how bleak it looks. But there's great opportunity. There's great opportunity in times like this. And we need Ron Paul for president. But you know what? There's not enough Ron Pauls, and there's not enough people like these legislators that are up here today and the few that are up at the Capitol fighting for the Constitution, trying to honor their oath of office to uphold the Constitution. There's just not enough right now. And that's why we need you. We need you to interject yourself into the political process like you're doing today, but also by contacting your state representative and your state senator, by email, by letter, by coming up here in force like you are today. You don't realize how much power you have. You know, there's a politician that once said something like, when I feels the heat, I sees the light. You know what? When you show up in force like this, they see the light and they feel the heat. And they need to feel the heat. And we need you to come up while the legislature's in session in numbers like this, to go inside this Capitol building and talk to your state representative and your state senator and all of the other ones. We are supposed to be your public servants, not your masters. You know, something that happens, people get elected up here, and a lot of them come up here with this idea that when they get elected, well, I'm one of the ones now that get to decide for everybody else what they can do and what they can't do. And that's something we fight against all the time. We're the ones that get to decide, and we're going to cram down everybody's throats what we think ought to be done. But it's not that way. And it will be that way, and it won't change until you make it change. because a few people in the system can't make it change. So you have tremendous power. We get very little input from the constituency. But when you come out in numbers like this, or you come with emails and letters and phone calls, a lot of people start quivering in their boots and their shoes.
And they should.
They should, you're right. And you didn't make them do that, because they need to remember what they're here for. Now, Kay Beach was talking about something that is very, very important. After all the years that I've been up here, it took me a few years to figure this out, that really this is the biggest kept secret in politics, in our state and in every state government all over this country and in Washington, D.C. It kind of goes like the old saying, those who control the rules control the game. If you can control the rules, you can control practically everything, or literally everything. And that's what goes on at this Capitol building. They control the rules. Just a handful of people, literally a handful of people, decide what bills will get heard and what bills won't. Now think about this. Some of you, there's people here from all kinds of different districts all over this state. Let's say that some people over here elected a state representative. They elected Kay Beach to be their state representative, to come up here and represent them and do some things for them and address some issues that they want. And she comes up here, but another state rep that got elected from somewhere else in the state is made the chairman of a committee, or maybe the Speaker of the House. And when Kay tries to offer her legislation to represent her people so that you have a voice, you know, we are supposed to have representative government, then that chairman or that speaker just says, no, I'm not going to hear your bill. Not going to hear it. Not going to allow it to even have a hearing. They're not just saying no to Kay Beach, that state representative. They're saying no to everyone that sent somebody up there. They're saying you don't have a voice in your government. And that's the biggest problem we have. They think they're the deciders. And people don't understand that. They think we get up here and then somehow we all just sell out our principles or don't try to represent the people that sent us up there. But it's a few people that have gained power over the rules. And so this rule that she referred to says simply this. It puts a rule in place that says if an author of a bill wants his bill heard, it must get a hearing. Now let me tell you what that means. Let's talk about the practical application of that. Let's take something like Second Amendment rights. Open carry. Let's talk about something like some legislation having to do with Obamacare. You know, Representative Mike Rentz had 2 years ago, he had the best bill filed to nullify Obamacare in the state of Oklahoma. Now, the bill that they let it go through, was a bill that was still said that we wouldn't allow the individual mandate of Obamacare to be implemented in the state. Most people thought when they voted for that on the ballot in 2010 that we were repealing or nullifying Obamacare in the state. We should have heard the other bill, which actually did nullify all of Obamacare in the state. But the reason we didn't even hear it is because they wouldn't let it even get a hearing. Now, if it would have got a hearing, a majority of your state legislators would have voted for it, and then it would have gone on the ballot, you would have voted for it, we would have actually nullified it in the state. In the meantime, now they're trying to cram down Obamacare down everybody's throats with these health exchanges. And we need you to interject yourself in the process up here. In an election year like this, you have even more power because people are really afraid to cast a bad vote in an election year. You need to let them know that you're against health exchanges, that you want your voice to be heard, you want them to stop muzzling the people and denying their right to address their government by supporting this resolution, House Resolution 1004. Now let me ask you something. Has anybody heard of something called NDAA? Like Representative Christian says, can you imagine that we've gotten this far in this country, that legislation like that's passed? I have a bill, it's HCR 1025. HCR 1025. Well, surprise, surprise, they're not going to hear it. Unless you make them hear it. And we need a revolution up here at this Capitol building. And we need you to make it happen. We need Ron Paul. We need people like Ron Paul. But it's going to take a lot more people to change the policies up here. And so I appreciate your support for Ron Paul coming out today. And remember, you have a lot of power. Use that power. And let's get Ron Paul elected president.